Okay, I swear I'm not being hyperbolic. Just stick with me here, okay? What's good, everybody? This is the Generation All coming back to you with a video I didn't actually expect to make, only just because I didn't think I'd care so much, honestly. Even though, like, I am a big fan of the series, but I guess you could say I'm such an old head in the sense of like everything that's happening right now is not new to me. I've been a part of the series long enough that I knew this would eventually happen yet again. History tends to repeat itself, but I guess this time it's really the implications of exactly what's happening that's actually making me wanted to make this video. So in case you guys didn't already know, apparently Pokemon, the company announced that the Pokemon Bank will be closing next year in 2027 in February. That means that a lot of the Pokemon games that you have from Emerald, Ruby, Sapphire, all the way up to, I believe, all the 3DS games will no longer be transferable over to the new Switch games. Now, you can still do it as of right now. So if you have a chance, you have, like, you know, that special shiny Celebi that you want to get from old gen to new gen, you're more than welcome to. Again, you have until February 2027 to do so. But the fact that this is happening, like I said, at first didn't surprise me because a lot of people tend to forget the same thing happened from the jump from Gen 2 to Gen 3. Essentially, you could not transfer anything from Gen 1 to Gen 2 and Gen 3. Hence why they also did a re-release of Fire Red and Leaf Green to help you get some of the Johto decks back, and as well as the Kanto decks back as well. So with this happening, again, it wasn't a surprise. I knew it eventually would happen, and I don't play Pokemon as religiously as I used to, but it's kind of one of the main reasons I didn't even bother getting Pokemon Bank, because I kind of figured something like this would end up happening, even though a lot of people, and that's when you can talk about like the ethical concerns of this, that a lot of people did end up getting a lot of the new Pokemon games and did end up subscribing to Pokemon Bank with thinking that they would always have access to the Pokemon via that way. But it is what it is. Now we're in where we're at, but I think the implications of it is what we all really should be worried about. And so let me just state first, because there's a lot of, I guess, arguments that go around the internet. I am not anti-digital future. I think the digital future is inevitable. I've been speaking about that for years at this point, for years. But I do still feel the right that you should have a choice. If you want to do physical, you should be able to do physical. If you want to do digital, then you should be able to do digital. You shouldn't be forced to do one or the other. You should be able to have the choice. So that's where I stand when it comes to the digital stuff. So I don't want people to think it's like, oh, he just hates digital content. No, that's not the case. And like I said, I am a part of the problem that I'm about to actually explain here, in the sense that I did buy the re-releases of Fire Red and Leaf Green. I did Leaf Green because green is my favorite color, and technically I grew up playing yellow, but then when I technically never got a chance to play Fire Red and Leaf Green. So it's like, well, if I wanted to play one of those, I'm going to do the tougher one, because a lot of people consider the decks in Fire Red to be a lot better than what's in green. So it is what it is. So with the re-releases of those games, and with the announcement of the Pokemon Bank closing down, I think it's inferring kind of a worse problem, in the sense of that Nintendo is, or specifically the Pokemon Company, but as well as Nintendo, is starting to usher in their own digital future. There's already been speculation. I'm not sure if it was because of that data hack that ended up happening a couple months ago, but a lot of people are also stating that eventually we will be getting Ruby, Sapphire, and potentially Emerald re-released onto the eShop for the Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2. And that's essentially the indication of Nintendo has every intent to reboot the series, in the sense of that now, to have access to all of these Pokemon you already had access to, now you have to rebuy them to essentially be able to transfer them to Pokemon Home at that point. And the implications of that is kind of weird, because then it's like, again, nobody's forcing you to essentially buy the Pokemon games again, but a lot of the fans are rabid. Like, again, I even stated I don't play Pokemon as avid as I used to, and I still bought Leaf Green. I'm a part of the problem. But with the fact that Nintendo's rebooting, you know, the series, and they're going to make us rebuy these games all over again, I think indicates how they're slowly pushing their own digital future agenda themselves. Now, Pokemon has always been in a unique situation, because I want to give credit where credit is due. And again, like, maybe it's because, again, at the end of the day, I'm a Pokemon fanboy because I grew up with it. I love the series. Is that you've never really had a game that could continue throughout multiple generations. Usually it's like a reboot or just like a new iteration of something. So like even if you play like a story, like right now I'm actually playing Majora's Mask, and even though it's a direct sequel of Ocarina of Time, and there's definitely a lot of systems that come from Ocarina of Time, it's still its own game. It's not like I could bring my inventory from Ocarina of Time and automatically have it in Majora's Mask. That's something that's always been different with Pokemon, where if you knew how, you could essentially get an event Pokemon you got from Emerald and transfer it all the way up to Scarlet and Violet, as long as you had the time and the willpower. So, and no other game has really been like that. Even now, the only games, and it's going to be a weird comparison, but just bear with me, is honestly the Call of Duty games. And the Call of Duty games, what I mean by it, and it's funny because even a couple of years ago, we were making fun of it. It's like, there's no way they're going to do this. Saying, hey, if you bought a gun in a game, you should be able to take that gun into other games and use it as well, because I mean, you bought it, why not use it in multiple games other than one? And at the time we were laughing. It was like, okay, like why would you use a Call of Duty game gun in like a Battlefield game or something like that? But we just didn't understand the concept at the time until we actually saw it now. It's like, oh, literally I bought a Scar that had like 5,000 attachments, and I can literally bring it through Black Ops 6, Black Ops 7. I probably am going to be able to put it in Modern Warfare 4, and I'm not buying that trash. So that's kind of like the first iteration, besides Pokemon, that we've actually seen inventory or just items being able to be transferred from one game to another. So Pokemon has always been in a unique situation because of that. So even giving them that benefit of the doubt of saying, yeah, because there's a lot of the implications of it in the sense of that, well, they have to do this, because I think that's exactly what happened with Gen 2 to Gen 3, going from the Game Boy to the Game Boy Advance. It was just new technology. It was new coding. It was going to just be too complicated, especially back then with the internet infrastructure just wasn't what it was today. So it made sense having to essentially kind of cut the rope there, saying, hey, sorry, we have to stop this somewhere and we have to restart it again because of the new technology. Now, that being said, it's just like, well, okay, you've literally gone through Gen 4, Gen 5, Gen 6, Gen 7, Gen 8, all those, and they were applicable, like you could transfer them. Why can't you continue to transfer them? But I also think, and this is hoping, this is like wishful thinking, maybe the new Winds and Waves or whatever it's called, like it's actually going to be finally a substantial upgrade. Even though, again, I've never been a graphics guy. I've never been one of those Pokemon people like, oh my god, graphics, why aren't they better? I just want a good game, like an enjoyable game. But maybe that's why. Maybe they're finally upping their game, where now they have a new coding infrastructure, and now they essentially have to put a hard stop to make sure that everything is going to work out as far as the coding goes. Because that's the other thing too, like there's multiple Pokemon that are going to be left behind. The battle ready Greninja, the Pikachu Pokepow with Ash's hat is going to be gone, but apparently also Spinda's going to be gone too, because Spinda for whatever reason cannot be uploaded to Pokemon Home because of the coding structure. I think it's because of the spotting of the Spinda. I think it just messes with their technology. But there's just going to be some Pokemon that are just lost to time. But yeah, coding, man, coding's complicated. Okay, so with this being their plan, and I know right now the big topic of the day is not only Grand Theft Auto, well, I mean, there's the leaks, but that'll be for another video, but Grand Theft Auto essentially going digital only, code in the box, even at retails, and then essentially PlayStation going digital, all digital in 2028, no longer producing physical discs. I know those are the big topics, and that's a lot of people are worried about, but I'm a true believer of you got to show the same energy for every one of these companies. So even though it's not as big of a scale with what's happening with the Pokemon Company and Nintendo with their digital agenda, it's also already kind of started, and I can prove that in 3D All-Stars. So if you guys don't remember the 3D All-Stars, Mario 3D All-Stars, the specific situation for that is it was a limited run time only. So you could only buy it for limited time physically, and you could only buy it for limited time digitally. After, I forget it was, I think it was just a couple months, they no longer produced it physically. So if you found one in the wild, cool, you got lucky. And then digitally, you just couldn't download it anymore. So they literally just stopped producing the game altogether. And then there is one exception, which I will say it's okay, good on them. But at the time, we did not have access to Sunshine. We only had access to Super Mario 64 via the expansion pass for Nintendo. And then eventually we got Galaxy and Galaxy 2 as a re-release for physically for the Switch. So those were the only exceptions at the time. But now they've recently added Super Mario Sunshine to the Nintendo eShop. But again, that's exactly what they're doing with Pokemon, where you could have had it physically at one point, now we're just going to say, hey, we're cutting it off. Now, if you want it, hey, you have to subscribe to the service. If you want to play 64 and Sunshine, you have to have the expansion pass. And then, like I said, right now, Galaxy and Galaxy 2 is the only exception. But I think that as far as from my personal headcanon is that they are doing a hard stop on the Wii. Because again, the Switch and the Switch 2 still have the motion control capabilities. So I really do truly believe that they're stopping at the Wii. And if they do plan on re-releasing anything from the Wii and the Wii U, because we've seen multiple Wii U ports, those will actually still be available physically for the time being. But anything before that will only be made available digitally at that point. So with that being said, like I said, it's more of just it's a cautionary tale. And again, I'm a part of the problem. Again, I can admit that. I bought Leaf Green. I bought Leaf Green. But even that, I still complained about like how they did the releases. So first off, again, it wasn't a dual package. So if you wanted to buy both of them, it was going to cost you like $80 if I remember, because I think both of them were $39.99. And if you wanted different regional content, like if for whatever reason, it's like, okay, I want to play it in Spanish, you couldn't just change it to Spanish. Like I had to get a Spanish version. And it's just those little things. It's just like any way to make that sale number go up. But I think that's just kind of, especially when it comes to the Pokemon fandom, that's what we've been conditioned as kids or young adults or teenagers. What is their motto? Gotta catch them all. And at this point, you could even argue you can't do that anymore, because like unless they re-release some of these event Pokemon, again, the Virtual Console Celebi, there was the Channel Jirachi, the Battle Ready Greninja, and then the Pikachu Pow. These are Pokemon that are just gone. So you could technically not catch them all. It's just impossible. So, but yeah, so it's something where I just want to make people wary of, make sure they're aware. Because again, you got to show the same energy. If you do this for Sony, if you do this for Rockstar, you got to do it for Pokemon and Nintendo. They may not be as egregious, though. I kind of think Pokemon Company is just as bad as Rockstar for right now. Because what if they announce Winds and Waves as digital only? Like that would destroy the internet. And at that point, you're like, bro, see, I told you. But as far as, again, the Nintendo and PlayStation goes, obviously PlayStation is doing a hard cut. But I think Nintendo is just gradually introducing us to the digital features. Like, okay, here's this digital, but here's this physical. Like you could have this, but you can't have that. So it is what it is. But yeah, guys, if you enjoyed the content, definitely leave a like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how wrong I am. I know when it comes to like certain like fandom, some people either like absolutely hate Pokemon or they absolutely love Pokemon, and there's no in between. There's no like nuance of saying, hey, like not necessarily fence sitting, but it's just like you got to see both sides of it and kind of come to your own conclusions. Be a free thinker. So. But yeah, thank you guys for joining me today. We'll see how long this takes to edit. Hope you guys enjoyed the background too. It took me 2 hours to set this all up. So, all right, this has been The Generational, and we'll catch you guys later.